hello to everyone who's here. Thank you for joining us. So I did want to, I came across something that I wanted to share with you kind of as we get going here. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know if you can see that, but this was, I just wanted to point out that this, the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 3 years ago, it did not exist. Okay, this is from February of 2019. And this is when we were testifying in front of the House Judiciary Committee, on behalf of the bill. And by the way, it was not a sure thing at that point. There had been a similar bill introduced 2 years earlier, and that died in committee. That never even got to the floor. So, we didn't know that this was going to actually happen. So this is not even 3 years ago in 2019. And then later that year, here we go. In April, it did pass. It was signed into law. Here was the first public meeting of the commission, and that was in September. That's Cheryl and Eiffel there. Let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to point out here. Oh, this was here we are meeting with coalition leaders today. This was the very first meeting of coalition leaders, and that happened right after the conference that we held at Morgan State at the end of 2019. So, the point of this is just to kind of point out how far we've come in such a short amount of time. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. We have only been the commission, that is to say, the commission has only been in business for 28 months, and 24 of those months have been during the pandemic. So I just, I wanted to bring that up today just because I know that there's some frustration that's being expressed in some quarters, and justifiably so. I mean, people are, there's frustrated with the scheduling, with the protocols, with the resources, the genealogists and the historians, and wanting to get that help, and that is really important, and I do get that, but just I just want to keep that perspective of how far we've gone in such a short amount of time. As I have said in the past, there is no manual for running this operation, and I don't think anyone who's involved in the commission or in the none of us have had any history, any experience with Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So, we are feeling our way, all of us together, and I think that those of us who are on this call, everyone on the commission, everyone in all of the coalitions, I just want to remind everyone that we are all rowing in the same boat, right? We all want the same thing, and I think it's important to keep that in mind as we move forward, because it is a halting process in some ways, but it is progress. I mean, there are people in 49 other states who wish they had the problems that we had of how to apportion resources, how to schedule this and that. We are still the only state that's involved in this work, and I think that the importance of that can't be overstated. So, I realize there is an irony that someone like me is asking for patience, because I am the least patient person I know, to tell you the truth. But that's all I'm saying is, and I think I have to say the hiring of Stephanie Thompson to work as the project manager, coordinator for this for the commission is one of the best things that's happened since we started, and I think you'll see the evidence of that today. I think Stephanie's going to bring a whole new level of organization to this whole effort that is only going to be helpful to all of us moving forward. So that's really all I wanted to say. And I did want to mention, by the way, I assume you all know, but we are recording the meeting so that your colleagues who are unable to be here can get the benefit of this. And so with that, I think I'm just going to turn it over to Stephanie, who has created that wonderful document that was forwarded earlier to everyone. And here's a chance to go over it and ask questions about it. Stephanie.
Well, thanks. I always love when you do an introduction because I know I'm going to hear more information about the history of the commission, which is great. I learn something new every time that I talk about you. And then you also have some of the best analogies and metaphors. You know, we talk about it's a huge undertaking, and all of you as parts of this, whether you're on the commission or whether you're a coalition leader, you are all trailblazers. As he said, this is the first of the 50 states to get this opportunity. There's not always a plan always laid out perfect, and we have to sometimes make the plan as we go. And so that's where we are with it. I'm excited and I'm very honored to have had the opportunity and to continue to be able to work with everyone. As Will mentioned, one of the reasons that I wanted to come today back to your monthly meetings was to be able to talk a little bit at a higher level about the planning guide that I created. And I will stress that it's a guide, in that, yes, when Will brings it up, you'll see it's very detailed. It's got quite a bit of task on there. It may feel a little bit overwhelming, but we take it one piece at a time. I've tried to organize it in a way where it goes by time. So we start, you know, kind of the wide spans of weeks out, months out, and then we kind of narrow it in. We go from 4 or 5 months, 30 days, 90 days, 60 days, and we go and we narrow it in. And there's tasks along the way that will get done. As the project manager, I kind of see myself as the shepherd of everything. You'll notice on the document as we go through it, and I'll say, Will, is that pulled up?
I
Am
can
I
pull it. No, yeah, no, it's
okay?
not yet.
Okay, you can go ahead. You can go ahead and pull that up. Um, for some of you, you may have had a chance to take a look at it. You may not. What I wanted to do was just to go down through it. We won't spend too much time on any one section, but I really just wanted to be able to talk through it. If there were general questions that you have about it, I would say if you could maybe hold those till the end, till I get through it. I won't spend hours going over it because I know that you all have questions, but I'll just hit on certain parts. I may even answer your question along the way, but then once I've kind of done a review of it, then we can talk about some general questions that you have. Also keep in mind that the plan here after today is that I will be reaching out. Some of you have already had an opportunity to talk with you. We've started figuring out what are the best dates for us to be able to meet. My goal is to connect with everyone, all of you coalition leaders, so that we can find the best date to meet and we can have that initial planning meeting. That initial meeting is going to give us an opportunity to level set, right? And that level set is going to include venue, finding a venue, making sure you have one, all of those kind of early big tasks that we need to get done, you know, as far enough out in advance as we can. And then during that meeting, we can talk about things that are specific to your county. This document is very general, so it's designed for any county to be able to use it. There are things that we'll have to probably tweak for your specific county. There may be some additional tasks that we have to do that are specific for your community, and that's fine. We can do that. And when we are meeting specifically and for your county, that's when we can talk about some of those details that may be specific to your particular county or coalition. So I say that to say, if you notice there's certain tasks that you know, oh, this has got to be done for our county, and you don't see it here, don't worry, because we'll have an opportunity to make sure that everything that has to be done for your county, your coalition, to have a successful hearing, we'll make sure that those things are talked about and addressed when we have our specific planning meeting for your counties.
Is
So
that legible, Stephanie? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure is it large enough?
yes, it
Okay.
is perfect for me. Can everybody see that okay?
Okay, great.
I think we're good, Will. Okay, so this is the planning guide. And as Will scrolls down, you'll notice that I've grouped it by time frame. So we've got 12 weeks out. We've got, and Will, that's fine. You can go. You can keep going. We've got 8 weeks out. And then we've got the final 4 weeks. And then we've even got, things that are going to happen after the hearing. And I did that because I feel like logically, most people probably, when they're trying to plan something big, you think about what are the first things that we have to do, right? What are the things that have to be done in those first several months? And then, okay, now we're 30 days out. What do we have to do? Okay, we're a week out. What do we have to do? So that was the approach that I took. Instead of just trying to put everything on the page and having all dates all over the place, I tried to group it logically. So Will, if you could take us back up to the top. This first section here, we'll start with this. This is 12 weeks out. Now, don't get too married to the fact that that says 12 weeks. That's 3 months, but some of you are definitely going to have far more than 3 months on the calendar to be able to plan your hearing, because your proposed month is far enough out this year that there's going to be more than 12 weeks that you're going to have in advance. But I just chose that, kind of as a standard date. On that very first call that we have, and ideally that will be me, it will be potentially the logistics chair, Maya Davis, if she's able to attend. It would also be your liaison commissioner if they're able to attend. And then it would be each of you, leaders of your coalition. We will meet for your specific county or groups of counties. And during that call, we're going to talk about the first initial things that we want to get out of the way. So that's obviously talking about the goals and objectives of the hearing. I think most of you probably already know what that is, but if we need to level set, if there are new coalition leaders that have maybe come on in the last year, we can certainly have that conversation. As far as a hearing date, we also want to confirm that hearing date. As everyone knows, some of those proposed dates that we're going to hit early this year, I should say, in February, January, those had to all be reset. So the commission leaders have proposed months further out in 2022 for your hearings. There's no date that has been set yet. It's proposed months, because there's an opportunity when we meet specifically with you to finalize what is the actual date. So let's say, for example, if your county has been given a proposed date of June, then when we meet that first meeting, we will talk about what is a good hearing date. What's a good specific date in June for us to go? That may depend on finding a venue, right? That's the key. So if we find a venue that's available on a certain date in June, then that's the date that we're probably going to need to go with. So some of those kind of big ticket logistic items are the things that we want to hit on during that first call. So confirming a hearing date. We can also have some conversation around, has your victim been identified? Are there descendants that have been identified? Most of you have responded back, and thank you so much for the information that we polled you about the research needs for your county. So we can have some general conversation around that if we need to still do that, right? Making sure that we get your resources connected with genealogy or the additional research. We can have some of that general conversation during that first call as well. Again, I talked about the venue, making sure that we identify a venue that has some audio video capability. Is there Wi-Fi capability? Does it have local historical community relevance? Those types of things. And then also we can talk about security needs. Is that going to be necessary? What does that look like? Are there other key community groups or individuals that we need to engage? Maybe not necessarily with the planning, but when it comes to saving the dates, local officials, making sure that I'm aware of who that is, so that if we need to engage them or let them know that this is coming, that we do that as early as we can. And then also talking about ways to socialize the hearing in your communities. Each of you are really experts on how that might best be done for your community. So having some dialogue about that. I
Can
will
I
also.
interject something here, Stephanie, just for a
Oh,
second?
sure.
I mean, this is a point that I was going to make later, but you just brought it up, and I just think it can't be stressed enough.
Mm-hmm.
The success of this whole effort of these hearings and of the commission itself is really, to a very large extent, dependent on the buy-in, on the public buy-in. And this is a particular area in terms of getting people to the hearings, getting them engaged, getting them involved. That is something that really the local coalitions are going to have to take a lead on. The commission, writ large, that's not going to happen from them. So I think it's, I think it's worth understanding from the beginning and thinking about this all the way through is the best ways to reach out to the people in your community that should be there, that need to know about it, and how to engage them and how to make sure everyone knows about it. And I apologize for the interruption, but
No, you're fine.
Critical thing that we need to address. And I'll be quiet now. Sorry.
No, you're totally fine. You're good, Will. So for me personally, I would envision that first initial call that we have probably needs to be, probably need to get about an hour on the calendar for it. We may not go the full hour, but we're gonna need more than 30 minutes just to be able to get through all those items, make sure that we give enough time to have conversation, that we don't feel rushed. And then also during that first initial call, we can talk about what is a good cadence for planning meetings going forward, because it just won't be that one. We'll figure out what's a good day and time for everybody, right? For you as the leaders, for the liaison commissioner, and then for myself to find the best day and time for us to have a regular set of meetings on the calendar. And we can talk about what's the best cadence, right? For some of you, it may be monthly, right? There may be a lot of different things that we don't necessarily get nailed down in that first meeting, and we may have to meet every couple of weeks, right? In those first couple of months to kind of get things nailed down. Once we get further along in the planning and some of those big ticket logistic items are set, then we maybe only have to meet monthly. Maybe we can handle some things offline on email. We may not have to actually have live meetings, but we can decide that during that first call. So, Will, I know I'm going to go back against my own thing. I said that I wasn't going to take questions until the end, but I said a lot there. So I'm going to stop, pause, and see if we have any questions so far.
And feel free to unmute and raise. Let's see, here's something.
Let's see, Marlena has one.
Yeah.
She should go to the chat. Let me look and see. It says from Marlena, hello, good morning. She says, I'm not clear from this document. Looks like meetings are with single coalitions, but hearings are grouped. Okay, so let me clarify that. Based on how it is explained to me, there are certain counties that are grouped together for their hearing. Like for instance, I'll say Lower Eastern Shore is grouped together. It makes up, or Wycomico and Worcester make up that grouping. There may be coalitions for each of those counties, but collectively together, you make up Lower Eastern Shore and your hearing would be collectively together. So when you hear me mention your planning hearing, it would be collectively with, if you're paired with another county, for you to have a collective hearing with those, that other county, or maybe if it's more than one county group together, when we have those planning calls, it will be all those counties grouped together that will be on the call together. It won't be separate. So going back to that original example, Lower Eastern Shore, we won't have a separate planning call with Wycomico and a separate planning call with Worcester coalitions. We'll all be together when we're doing that. Marlena, does that help?
Yeah, it does. It's just that, when I was reading this, it says, as I'm reading it, and it's local coalition initial call and point of contact for the coalition, but it's saying it's singular. And so it was making me think that, okay, so they're going to be having, I'm Howard County. So
yes,
it's thinking like, okay, but we're grouped with Montgomery. And so since we're grouped with them, it's reading, the document's reading like you were going to be having just a call, you're having a process with us, and then you're having a process with Montgomery County. But if we're linked together, it seemed to me that, well, wouldn't all of this that I'm seeing in front of me on the screen, wouldn't all that be happening with us with Montgomery County? But that's not the way that I'm reading it in the document here.
Well, I will say it's really that's grammar on my part. So where you see something that is listed singular, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is one coalition point of contact or one coalition leader. That was just me choosing to list it singular as what or versus plural. But using your example with Howard County and Montgomery County, yes, if you're going to have, and I say if, because I know that there was some conversation about certain counties that found a need to go separate, and we can, when we have that first call, and I would say we have Howard County and Montgomery County together, we can have some conversation about that, you know, staying together, or if there was a need to split apart and have a separate hearing, we can have conversation around that. But yes, when we meet that first initial, we'll meet together. It will be Howard County and it'll be Montgomery County together. So the fact that it just says singular, you know, I would say excuse the fact that it doesn't say plural. It's just intended to mention point of contact or coalition point of contact. It doesn't mean that on a particular call, it can't be more than one coalition leader that is on that call. And most likely it will be multiple coalition leaders who are on that call together because their counties are grouped together for purposes of having one hearing.
So Stephanie, this is Karen with St. Mary's County. We were confirming our meeting with you for this coming Thursday, but I didn't see Charles Bennett from Calvert County in any of the emails. So have we been separated from Calvert County in our hearing, or did you not include him because you didn't know we were linked, or were you expecting me to invite him, or what?
No. That was just me, that I just didn't have him in the email string with us. So there was no intention of separating that at all. That was just an error on my part that I didn't have him in with our initial email string.
So Deborah has had a question as well, Stephanie, in the chat about when will people find out what months their hearings will be?
So when we have that first initial call together, that's when we will talk about what the proposed month is for your hearing. And I figured it would probably be a little bit easier that way than to kind of go through the full rundown today, just because it's a lot of information. It's very specific, and I wanted to be able to keep things at a general level today, rather than taking the time to go into all of the specifics for every county. Any other questions about this first part that we've talked about here? No? Okay. Well, as they come up, I'll stop along the way as well. And if there are other questions that come up, we'll talk about that. The next grouping of tasks will go to 8 weeks. And Will, you don't have to scroll back up, but there were a couple of other items that were in the 12-week grouping. That's fine. Those things relate to some of the research that will go on, and some of those things will be led, some of those tasks will be driven forward by the research committee. Again, I will be engaging with them to make sure that we stay on track with that. You'll probably notice that there's multiple tasks that will be running concurrently throughout, because there's a lot of different things that are going on. There's the research work that goes forward at the same time. There's also the logistical planning for each hearing as well. So, and Will, you can scroll back down. So in this next grouping, again, it says 8 weeks out. That could be a longer period of time. It's just a set standard amount that I listed. Here is, again, where we would want to make sure if we have to have any kind of follow-up contact with victim descendants as they've been identified, any kind of additional engagement with the genealogist, any of that research needs. Again, those are tasks that are going to be shepherded or driven, I should say, by the research committee, and I'll make sure that I'm engaging with them to make sure that they're keeping progress with that. Also, in this next time grouping is circling back just to make sure that we're solid on what's going on with the venue. If there's any additional contacts we need to make to just make sure that we have venue confirmation, making sure we do that. Also making sure that we're solid on any type of audio visual special setup needs that may be necessary, getting into the production part of that, all of those things we would want to make sure that we address. Again, you'll see where it mentions project manager, liaison commissioner, coalition point of contact, or coalition leader. I will be making sure that those things are nailed down. And what that means is that I'll have to be working with coalition leaders on that. We'll partner with that. I don't want you to think that you'll be by yourself on that. But you'll see who's responsible is listed, but that may vary a little bit, right? I will be with you making sure that we have these things, firm as they need to be. The next grouping of tasks, it mentions begin planning for on-site virtual audio visual production. Again, those are the production needs. So when we're meeting and talking about everything solid with the venue and confirming audio visual setups, that's where we need to talk about the production aspect of it, right? What kind of webinar access do we have? Do we need a backup? Do we have virtual access availability for whatever guests may come? Again, what that looks like is going to be very specific for each hearing, but obviously we'll have some call out to it here on this planning document. And then also during that time frame, if there are some key folks in the community, stakeholders, other coalition members other than leaders, things like NAACP president. These are just examples that I put. This is not firm. Please don't get married to just the examples I've given here. I've just literally listed just some examples. If there are other key local officials and local folks that we want to participate, be guests, and be at the hearing, then we want to make sure we engage them with a save the date reminder so that they're aware. And then coming back to those efforts to socialize the hearing in the committee, right? This is going to go on. I mean, this is going to be ongoing. It's not just going to be, it's only going to happen once at one time in the planning. It's going to go on continuously. But again, I've called it out here just to make sure that it's something that is not missed there. So I'll stop there before we go on to the final 4 weeks out, that 30-day period before the hearing. Any questions on this part? Or thoughts or comments?
Stephanie,
Yes.
Marlena had a question about the Heritage Associates, and I pointed out to her that that's the contractor that the commission has hired, but I'm wondering if maybe you could provide any additional information about their services and how that's going to be arranged and everything.
Yes, so Heritage is the, as you mentioned, Will, they're the outside vendor who is assisting with some research. I don't think that David Armenti, I don't think he's on the call today, but the research committee has had some conversation. In fact, the joint research logistics committee, the group from Heritage, there was a representative from Heritage that was able to attend that last meeting. In short, really what they're doing is helping with research. I don't know the specifics if they're able to help with every county. I know that they have started some of that assist. David and the research committee is really acting as a go-between. So one of the reasons why we wanted to poll you to find out, do you have your victim identified? Are their descendants identified? Is to be able to level set on where you are with your research and to figure out what your additional needs are. And then knowing that, what do we need to ask Heritage to assist on with that? Now, having said all of that, I don't know what the specific research assist will look like for each of your counties, for your victim and your descendants that have been identified, or additional assist that you need. when we are talking specifically and having specific meetings about your hearing, we can go a little bit more in depth about what kind of assist Heritage will be able to do for you, or what they may have already been able to gather for your victim and for the descendants.
Jack had his hand raised as well.
Yes.
Stephanie, it's okay if you don't have, hi, it's okay if you don't have an answer to this, because obviously COVID is an evolving situation and we're in a new surge now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if there's been any discussion amongst the commissioners, just sort of generally gauging what 2022 public hearings will look like. I know there was discussion about, and it seems like we're leaning towards sort of a hybrid model. We'd have limited in-person presence, but largely virtual.
Right.
Or if it's going to be entirely virtual. I don't know if any of those conversations have happened yet.
So I'll answer that.
Okay. Hi, Dr.
Yeah, greetings everybody. Happy New Year. So Jack, those are going to be some of the first conversations that we have going into this new year, because we were hoping things would be better by now. They clearly are not. What you saw with the Allegheny County hearing is probably a good model for what you will see moving forward. There was only very few people, myself, Dr. Chavis, some of the local representatives that were physically in the space in Allegheny County, and the rest was live streamed for participants to join us virtually. I would say out of caution, obviously, because health and well-being is the most important thing with this, we will probably institute a similar model, hopefully not having to go fully virtual. I think that's our last ditch effort. Probably just kind of maintaining a very limited audience in person and everyone else being able to join us virtually. So yes, a hybrid model, I think, will be our standard for the time being through 2022. If things get better, then we certainly will entertain a larger in-person audience, because that would be the ideal circumstances. But as things are happening right now, again, out of abundance of caution, we will probably continue to employ a hybrid model.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
And for those who don't know, that was Dr. David Falconley, who is the chair of the Maryland Lynching Truth and
Oh, yeah, I'm not a random guy. Good to see you.
Thanks, Dr. Falconley. I appreciate you answering that. Thanks, Jack, that was a great question. Let's see. It looks like we have a question in the chat. Let's see. From Melissa. Good morning. How are you? And Melissa's question is, has anyone created a budget or sample budget for this that you could share? Melissa, personally, I have not created a budget for it. That is something that we will have to talk about during those initial calls. I don't specifically know what kind of budget has been set aside, or if something has been set aside for all counties. If there's anybody else on the call that knows that, Dr. Falconley, please feel free to comment on that.
So I would ask Melissa, would you please elaborate what you mean by budget? Budget for research purposes? Are you talking about budget for the sessions? Could you be a little bit more specific about what you mean by budget?
Well, I was, when I asked the question, really just thinking on, to cover the costs of the event, or anything that might be associated with that, just trying to get a sense of, what are folks doing and spending money on as it relates to this. But I think it would also, now that you say it, it would also be helpful to know if we're covering the research fees and what kind of budget that might look like. I mean, we're here in Frederick County, we're really just getting started, and trying to figure out, how much money do we need to raise, or should be our goal for raising.
Right. So in terms of research, well, as was mentioned before, they are being paid by us. They are vendors that are being covered by funding that the commission has received. The one thing that I'll specify is that there's only so many people within that research component to go around. So part of why we are having these meetings is to make sure that we are properly allocating their time and energy as efficiently as possible. We know that everybody wants more research, and we want to make sure that they can assist with that as much as possible. And I do specify assist. So we're not just going to drop a bunch of information and say, hey, research this. It's hopefully to aid the existing work that is being done by local coalitions. So if there's any evidence, any materials, any research that has been done ahead of time, Heritage Associates are helping to aid and take that to the next level as much as they can. In terms of the budget for the events, well, that's where the meeting with local coalitions individually and collectively as we are structuring our sessions will be very important. They will not all look the same. Let me turn my camera on again. They will not all look the same. And we do want to be mindful of financial constraints or whatever the circumstances may be. With it being a hybrid model in all likelihood, certainly we have to make sure that we have the technological capabilities to have people join us and participate that way. I agree with the previous comment that I saw that says it makes it more accessible. Absolutely it does, and that's what we want. We want it to be as accessible as possible, so we need to make sure that the technological capabilities are there. If there are resources that we need to get, then we will discuss that and we will figure out how best to make sure that it's financially within the capabilities of both the commission as well as local coalitions. I say all that to say, that's where those specific conversations and those specific meetings will help kind of parse out those nuances.
Thank you.
Dr. Falconley, right? And I would imagine kind of just going on that a little more when during those initial first conversations that we have and talking about venue, just in my mind, it feels like that's a piece where there may be some resources that have to be spent on that. I'm just saying in general, oftentimes certain venues, even ones that are religious or historical, there still may be some need to spend money to make sure that's reserved. But again, we can have specific conversation about that when we get to that. And as he mentioned, figure out, are there resources available for what's needed, and then go from there. I see Janice has her hand up.
Yes, hi, everyone.
Hi, good
I'm
morning.
Janice. Good morning from St. Mary's. Just a background question, I guess, in terms of public hearings and making these connections within the time frame of having them. A lot of people don't go to public hearings. They don't even know what they are. If you say a hearing to some people, they think you're going to trial or court, or, like even the hearings that we do in terms of trying to get people to come to commissioners meetings and all. It just doesn't always happen. So are we building in some kind of educational piece or like public education about what hearings are? And I don't know how you do it, but I know that is the link that is always missing whenever we try to do things. You got to get on the phones and then and half the people don't even really know what is happening.
Right.
Thank you.
I think it's a good point that you make, and that gets back to socializing. So when you see a reference to socializing it in the community, that's really about marketing, right? That's kind of another way to say it. And you mentioned a good point about using the word hearing. Now, I don't know that we're able to really remove the word hearing from what it is. It is a public hearing, but starting early and starting often to whatever that outreach has to be for your specific community, that's where that socialization comes in, right? And so it's letting people know this is what it is, the education piece, telling the story of what is this hearing. It's a gathering, it's a public gathering. What is it for, right? What's the goal of it? What's the intention of it? And trying to do that as often in the community, and maybe in a variety of different ways, things that we'll have to talk about, what are the best methods of doing that, but doing it as early as possible and doing it in as many different ways as it can be done, with resources, so that people understand it's a public hearing, but it's not anything to be afraid of or to be scared of, I should say. But those things have to start well in advance, and it probably has to be outreach in different ways, in different methods, to do that education, as you call it.
And to follow up on what Stephanie said, Ms. Janice, I agree. I don't like the term hearing at all, because I don't want it to feel legal. There is no legal power other than the power of subpoena that we have. So I know that term turns people off. I understand wholeheartedly. We have to use it because it's in the law that created the commission, but more so than anything else, we want this to be a session of healing. That's the most important thing, is that people have the space to tell their story about the impact of racial terror lynchings on their communities. That is first and foremost. That does come with talking about the story of the lynchings themselves. So yes, it is educational. It is about presenting the history. It's also about talking about the current impact. So yes, we know that most of these lynchings happened 100+ years ago, but the impacts are still being felt now. What does that look like? How does that feel? Who's still experiencing it? So this is all part of the overall session. So we go back and forth, we calling in hearings and sessions. It's interchangeable because we want people to recognize the totality of what this experience is supposed to be. Again, if anyone hasn't had a chance to check out the Allegheny County session, check that out. That is a good kind of template for what we want to do. It mentioned the history. It talked about the history. We had the opportunity to have descendants of the victims talk about the impact, not just on their family, but on the communities in Allegheny County. We also had local officials from Allegheny County talk about just the impact of racial terrorism, racism, all that kind of stuff. So it's really meant to be a moment to coalesce around all of these societal challenges, of which lynching historically was one of them. This whole notion of racial violence is still ongoing. So that's what this space is supposed to be. But again, first and foremost, above all else, it's supposed to be for the healing of any descendants that are able to be a participant of it, but certainly the communities in which these things happen. Because yes, there were lynching victims, but we know communities of color, particularly Black communities, were especially terrorized because of this. That is going to be acknowledged. So that is why these meetings with coalitions are so important, because we want to make sure that it reflects the context of your communities. This is not supposed to be a cookie cutter hearing that we just plop in all of these different regions. Theoretically, every session should be different, because the Howard County one is going to look different. The Lower Eastern Shore County, Lower Eastern Shore is going to look different. It should be reflective of what the story is in those regions. That context you can provide, we cannot. Some of us may be from those regions, but most of us are not. So that's why it's important for us to make sure it ultimately serves the purpose of you, not just the coalition, but the people that you represent. So whatever that looks like from a cultural standpoint, from an artistic standpoint, and I say that because I am an artist, what it looks like in terms of the stories that are being shared, that's the insight that we want to gather from you all, so that we are confident that when we show up, virtually or otherwise, that we know you all and the communities that are going to particularly be affected by these sessions are going to get the healing, get the understanding, the appreciation, and the recognition of this history as much as possible.
Chloe had her hand up as well.
Hello. Thank you so much for providing this clarity. I think that there's a lot of great questions here. I wanted to get some clarity on the budget. And before I do that, just to the discussion topic that we're talking about in terms of education. One thing that you can do is just Google Cumberland Times News, Allegheny County, Truth and Reconciliation. You'll be able to see that we were able to do an article series where we basically linked up with a reporter, explained what we were trying to do, and formed an agreement with them that they would do a writing series. And we basically used that as our way to educate and socialize that the hearings were actually truth and healing sessions. And you'll see in each article, we do reference that the hearings are truth and healing sessions, and we do it to provide some education to prepare people for what's to come. So that's just something that I recommend to help people understand the purpose of what we're trying to do. In terms of the budget, we were under the understanding that really the whole purpose of the fiscal sponsorship was to provide a vehicle for us to fundraise for anything that we would need to have in terms of financing the event and the research. So we bootstrapped a lot of it. We, like the church was able to give us their space for free. People came out of pocket for a lot of things, including like some light lunch for the commission, as well as for paying for research tools. So I just wanted to make sure to get some clarity when we're talking about like budgeting. And if this is something we can take offline for later, of course we can do that. But just kind of setting an expectation that if you are not already fundraising, You probably really should. I don't know that there is a lot of budget set aside to support that you're not actually sourcing yourselves.
That said, if I could also just add that, depending on what the expense is, what's involved, the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project has contributed to these efforts and will continue to. So, we are also a resource depending on what's going on.
Can I ask the question, which is there some kind of document that does show like which expenses regarding these hearings are the commission picking up versus the ones that the county coalitions are, if there is an expectation that we're supposed to be, contributing financially for any aspect of this? Is there some document that's conveying that to us? Because I haven't seen anything to tell us this.
I do not personally know of a specific document.
So we don't have, so I would say we don't have a particular document as of yet. Those are the things that we want to clarify. In general, our major contribution of resources will certainly be to chronicling the event. So we want to make sure the event is shared and recorded of some form or fashion as much as we can. We continue to acquire resources, so that's the other kind of wild card that I'll throw out there. So what we may be able to do now may be different than what we can do a few months from now, because we're still continuing to gather support from various spaces to support this work. So what I can say is we'll do our best to convey what we will be able to support from our end and what we'll be looking for from coalitions to help us assist with the sessions, just so that's as clear as possible. But with everything, just so that people are prepared, it's a moving target because things are constantly evolving, but we'll do our best to communicate those changes as they are happening.
Okay, thank you. And I guess what I'm really wondering is, just be clear. I mean, we will be told that in looking at this document here, since it's talking about the, starting at the roughly about the 12-week mark. I mean, we will know this. We will be given this for that initial call, right? I mean, that we would know any expectation and any breakdown for what we may need to be providing on our own financially, certainly within 3 months of when we were going to be giving a thing, correct?
So the aim of the specific meetings are to nail down as many of those nuances as possible, yes. So any of those concerns, any of those specificities that are at the top of your head, that's what those meetings are for. We want to make sure all of that is as clear as possible once the meeting is over. And then any communications afterwards will be able to, again, address any additional nuances that need to be addressed.
Thanks everyone for your questions. We'll continue to, we'll just keep going forward in the document. And I'll just come back and say that just to remind everyone, during that initial call, we will not be able to solve everything. We won't even be able to necessarily have answers for everything, but it is to at least start the dialogue on it and then know this is what needs to be resolved. And then we can continue to do work on those things outside of the meetings or outside of that initial meeting. So just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that. Okay. So we'll coming towards the end of the document. And again, I'll stress it, I've said it before, but I'll continue to stress. When you see 12 weeks, when you see 8 weeks, 4 weeks, know that those are just standard timeframes. It's probably, and not probably, it will be for many of you, most of you, for your proposed dates are far enough out in the spring and towards the summertime that there's going to be more time than what you see here listed. So in that last 30 days, that's where we're looking at any kind of follow-up contacts that have to occur with any of the invitees, anyone that's going to be taking part, participating, maybe speaking during the hearing, the healing session, whatever kind of readiness checks, just checking in with those groups of individuals. Also, whatever kind of finalization has to take place with the research, oral histories, anything that's going to be presented, at the hearing, making sure that that's done. Again, that's driven by research committee. Also the folks from the commission that are going to attend in person. Again, that's just some of their personal logistics, making sure that they have booked lodging, transportation, all those different types of things. Any kind of test run that has to occur, however that's applicable for a particular hearing, what kind of tech test runs that have to be done, making sure that we're doing that within that last 30 days. And then I will also be doing a variety of formal check-ins, right, with all of the folks that are going to be engaged with the hearing, whether it's the commissioner co-chair who's going to attend and kick off the meeting, whether it's liaison commissioners, the leaders, coalition leaders, any of those little loose ends that are out there, I will be making sure in those last 30 days to check in with all of you, making sure that we're all set and things are tied down. And then skipping ahead to after the hearing, I want to gather with everyone involved as far as the coalition leaders and any of those key commissioners who were at the hearing to do a debrief, right? Talk about what worked, what did we learn, what would we do different, and one, that's good just to be able to reflect back on that, but that's also learnings that we can use and move forward with the next hearings that are going to take place and being able to document those findings. And then if there's any follow-up action, anything additional that is going to occur, making sure that those things are documented. So that was a lot that I went over and went through. Again, to stress, this is a guide. It's just to be able to have a starting point for making sure that we have some structure with how the hearings are planned and making sure that we don't miss any of the fine details that have to go on to make sure that you have a successful hearing, because that's really what this is about, right? The goal is not just to do things for the sake of doing things, but for all of you all to be able to have the most successful hearing that you possibly can, right? And to achieve what the commission was set in place to do.
And again, we know we may not be able to cover the totality of the experiences of racial terror lynching that happen in the different regions. We'd be there for weeks if we did that. So we hope that it either serves as a catalyst for heightened discussion, heightened action around it, or certainly certainly at the very least, a continuation of the work that's already been done. We don't deny that we are really standing on your shoulders when it comes to this. We're the new kids on the block, and we acknowledge that. So the work that we do as a commission builds off of the work that you all have been doing already. And that is hopefully respect that we are conveying to you all. So if there are things that we aren't able to accomplish, we hope to set you all up to accomplish them after we are done. We know that our time is finite, and we have to operate within that finite amount of time. So that's the one thing we got to acknowledge. We're not here forever. You all theoretically are here forever in terms of the coalitions and the local work that's being done to address these lynchings. So whatever we can do to set you up for success, including the sessions themselves, that is our goal. Now, that's not necessarily in the law, but that's what we as a commission want to do. So let me stress that. The law only cares about us doing the hearings, all right? The hearings and the recommendations. So let's keep it real. What we want to do is to make sure that this movement of addressing racial terror lynchings and racial violence continues long after the commission is done with its official work. So please keep that in mind, and please know that that is our ultimate goal, is that this doesn't just end up in a report and people can move on. No, we want to make sure that every coalition is strengthened by our existence as a commission, and that you all are contributing, again, your knowledge, your insight, your wisdom and context to making sure we set this precedent. Because that's what we're doing. We're setting a lot of precedent in this country when it addresses this stuff. So we want to make sure that it's not just the 18 commissioners, but also all these local coalitions that have been, I hope, in lockstep with us as we take this journey. So again, thank you. Most importantly, thank you for giving us the time, giving us the consideration, giving us the chance to do this right. And we hope that you'll continue to work with us to make sure we do it right.
Thank you, Dr. Falkland. I know there's a couple of questions that are in the chat from Karen and Marlena specific to budget. I will say, ladies, I will do my best that by the time that I am in a meeting with you to talk specific about your county or groupings of counties, that I have as much information that I can get as far as who will pay for what, right? How much budget there is, and whose responsibility a certain financial item is compared to someone else. I don't know that I will have all the answers, but I will try to have as much of that when we have that initial meetup, and we can have more conversation about it at that time.
Stephanie, thank you so much. This was incredibly, really helpful. And, you know, I can't tell you how grateful I am, and most people are, that someone is imposing order on what was chaos. So that is a huge, huge
That's good. It's good
contribution. It's true.
Good to hear. That's good to hear. And I just want to say, I know that seeing a document like that is extremely overwhelming. And I know that there's been a lot of fits and starts over the last year or so. And I will just say to all of you, trust me, it will be okay. We will get there, right? During those early initial calls that we have, I think a lot of the questions, I know there's more questions that you have, but we'll be on that call, and we can talk through all the questions that you have, so that as we continue to go forward, I think you're going to feel better and better and better about things, right? And you'll see more and more progress, and we will get there. So I just wanted to say that.
And please know, I know a lot of people were intimidated of sorts by the Allegheny session, because it was very great. We aren't nearly as organized then as we are now, and we were able to pull that one off. So take that as I would say encouragement. Like we learned a lot of lessons from the Allegheny County hearing, as good as it was, and I was very happy with how it turned out. We're taking those lessons, and we're taking the resources that we've acquired since that hearing and that session to bring to the subsequent ones. All right. So as Stephanie said, we'll be fine. We will get this done. It will be beautiful. It will be everything. It's hopefully everything that everybody wants out of this experience. We just ask for your patience, and we ask for your continued support and your energy. You do that, we'll make this happen for sure.
Thanks, David. So before we go, I did want to give Jack a chance to maybe bring people up to date on where things are with the Oral History Initiative. And Jack, thanks again for the wonderful note that you sent out to everyone yesterday. I think it was really helpful. But if there's I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions about that. And also if there's anything else you want to add to that, Jack, to let people know how that's going to proceed.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you again so much, Stephanie. I think, like Will was saying, like everybody else has been saying, you bring a lot of welcome, clarity, and organization to the process. So we're really looking forward to that. Yeah, I sent out a note to everybody last evening. Hopefully some of you were able to read it. But I guess, you know, I know we're short on time. What I really probably just want to do in the next minute or so is just really briefly speak to how the oral histories are going to relate to public hearings. I think that's the question that most people have been asking. And you can see from Stephanie's document that the oral history process is by and large going to be taking place before the public hearings as a really important sort of dress rehearsal for what's going to be going on in public hearings, right? The oral histories give us an opportunity to center those folks, those perspectives that have been historically and purposefully silenced and erased from the record. So we are prioritizing, particularly Black Marylanders who have a story to tell, and a story to tell that oftentimes goes against the grain of the established account, the lynchings. We saw that in Allegheny County, that, you know, we thought his name was William Burns, and in reality, his name was Robert Hughes. And we learned that from the descendants of Robert Hughes. So these oral histories are a really important way for us to give voice to the perspectives, like I said, that have been marginalized. But also to begin to develop those relationships with the folks that we want to be inviting to the public hearings, the folks that are going to be providing testimony at the public hearings. And likewise, when you conduct your oral histories with these folks, you can take and pull from the talking points that were discussed in the oral histories and use that to help develop some of the abbreviated testimony that they'll be providing at the hearings. And then at the same time, we have the capacity to, during the public hearings, play bits and pieces of the video and the audio from the oral histories if that's helpful. We'll be working closely with the commission to make sure that transcripts from the oral histories, key findings from the oral histories are communicated so that they can be included in the public hearings. And then to Stephanie's point, this process is going to continue even after the hearings, right? So we'll be doing this community-centered and driven work, and we'll likely be continuing to conduct oral histories beyond the public hearing process. Many of you have already done just a spectacular job with oral histories thus far, so I want to congratulate you on that. But we're going to be sort of renewing and reinvigorating everything in the new year. So looking forward to working with you all in that capacity. If anybody has any specific questions, I'd be happy to address them. But if not, we can wrap up.
All right. I think we're good. Anyone have any other questions about any of this or anything else? Otherwise,
I do.
yes.
I have a quick question. I don't know if y'all have a plan to set up a Google group or something we can use as a listserv to communicate with each other and share learnings and questions. If you need help with that, I know how to do that in like 5 minutes. So I'd be happy to volunteer.
Let me talk with you after this, because I think that would be that's a great idea, and it would be helpful, and it is beyond my skill set. I do have the email addresses, but I can give you the information, but as far as setting up the thing itself, no can do, but I would really appreciate your help. So let me get in touch with you after this meeting. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you, by the way.
Welcome. Welcome.
All right. Any other thoughts? All right. Yes.
I had a question, Janice here. What if, I know we have a specific information now that we had to do for the oral histories that we did collect, but what if you have other oral histories that have been collected over time? Can pieces and parts of those be used?
Yes, they can and they should. Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think St. Mary's also has some.
Yes,
some
we have.
Oh, you're from St. Mary's. Yeah, great. Yeah, yes, they should. They absolutely should be. And if any of that testimony is relevant, specific to the lynchings that you're investigating, yes, they can and should be included in the narrative that you all provide at the hearing. Like I said, we can take some of those materials and play them at the hearing, and you can, if you want, even invite some of the folks that provided testimony in those earlier oral histories to the hearing if you would like. So yes.
Thank you.
Of course.
So I have one last thing I just wanted to mention. I'm putting in the chat now a link to the community outreach forum that Baltimore County Coalition is going to put on in a few weeks, and it's a pretty interesting program. And I think even if you're not from Baltimore County, you'll find it interesting and enlightening. And so there it is for your edification. All right, thank you, Jack. Thank you, Stephanie. Again, whoops, Amy, do you have something to say, or is that?
Yeah, I was just gonna. I just want to echo. I don't want to mispronounce your name, but Aisha, your suggestion of connecting offline or outside of the formal meetings as coalition leaders. I think that our own network and support of each other is really important in this process, both today and into the future. So I appreciate you bringing that up as one idea. I think sharing resources, sharing supports, having conversations is all really fantastic. So thank you for that. And thank you, Will, for bringing us together in these gatherings.
Of course. All righty. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And I hope this was helpful. And the recording should be up in the next 48 hours. All righty. Take care, everybody.